us now, a frequent guest on Fox News, Republican presidential candidate and tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. So we are happy to have you on. I'm going to talk to you more than just about Fox News, but good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be
here. What
here.
do you make of this decision to settle this case?
I mean, it strikes me as a cost of doing business. If you're going to be a news network, I think it's happened to CNN. I think it's happened to a lot of news networks.
That has not
happened. It's a cost of doing business.
It's not happened to CNN. This is
never been sued for defamation. Never been actually settled.
This is the largest.
It's definitely large, and Fox appears to have the largest viewership and the market capitalization.
So I wanted to stop it there because he's being disingenuous. He was asked about Fox News, not about any other network. I can agree that there have been defamation lawsuits against probably every mainstream news network, but the Fox settlement is unheard of. This is about $200+ million away from $1 billion. And he is a frequent guest on Fox News. He didn't want to talk about it. And the reason why he didn't want to talk about it is because he wants to ensure Fox News that he's not going to say anything bad. So when his presidential run is over, so he'll have a job afterwards.
I'm not familiar with the details of this case. I'm actually more interested in issues relating to this country than disputes with media companies. But I will say that it strikes me that from CNN to Fox News.
You're not familiar with the case. You're not familiar with the lies about the 2020 election, about the election being stolen, that Dominion was somehow, fixing the votes. I mean, that's why they $787.5 million. You're not familiar with that? And you're running for president?
The details of a private dispute between a commercial dispute and the details of what the dollar figures are, that's not where I spend. That's really not where I spend my time. But what I will say is, look, there's defamation cases. People settle businesses. If you settle business disputes, Fox settled this one. It's actually not, I think, the pressing issue for the nation of what Fox News' settlement is.
I disagree with that because as you just admitted, you said Fox is the largest viewership, one of the largest viewerships among television networks, and especially cable networks, considering the eyes, the American people who are tuning in to Fox News to get their information and to get it accurately. I'm surprised that you would say that you're not concerned about this, and this is not something that is hugely pressing for the American people.
Here's the way I look at it.
Freedom of the press is the First Amendment in the Constitution.
And that is correct. Don Lemon is right there. If you are consuming news, which I'm going to do a video on Tucker Carlson, and when I did look at the ratings, Fox is number one. So if a lot of people are getting their information from Fox News, then it would be concerning, or should be concerning, which I know it's not to the people who view Fox News. It would be concerning that they're being sued to almost $1 billion because they put out information that was defamatory and slanderous against a company. The company had every right to levy the lawsuit. He doesn't want to talk about it. He's only concerned about his pockets. He's not going to address this.
Oh, exactly. You nailed it. The freedom of the press. So we have CNN, we have Fox. I'm here with you guys. I go on Fox News. I think that's great that we have a marketplace of ideas in this country. What I worry more about, Don, is the trend that we see in this country to controlling what different parties are actually able to say. The American way to bad speech is more speech. And so I think we need to actually embrace that culture and a more diverse marketplace of ideas. That's something we haven't done well enough in this country.
With all honesty, you're not answering the question. You're giving us platitudes about...
I'm actually unsure what your question is, Don. Do you want somebody to bash Fox News on CNN?
No, I'm not
asking you to bash Fox. I'm not asking you to bash Fox News. I'm asking you to be honest about what happened on Fox News, about the lies that were told, and them having to admit the lies and paying the largest defamation settlement to a media company in history, and you are a frequent guest on that network. Are you concerned about the credibility? Are you going to continue to go on that network even with those credibility issues? I have far more concerns with the credibility of what we will call the mainstream media than I do with the credibility of Fox News. But
Fox is the mainstream media.
At the end,
that made me cringe with secondhand embarrassment. He's more concerned about the mainstream media. He could have just went ahead and said MSNBC and CNN because Fox is a part of the mainstream media. My goodness.
At the end of the day, what I say is
Look, neither you nor I know the details because they settled it before it went to trial. I think the obsession over this is a little weird.
Vivek, listen,
it's a little bizarre.
I don't want to get into that.
There's real issues to talk about in the country.
Obsession.
Why are we talking about Fox News and the settlement?
This is a very big and important story. And I'm not going to, we have much more that we want to talk
I think we should.
About. But we will get there when we're ready to get there. We have you on to talk about these issues. This is a very important issue, and it should not be downplayed. This has to do with American democracy and Americans learning the truth about what happened in the 2020 election.
You want to know what?
You don't think that's important?
I hear a lot about
comparing it to CNN is not this apples and oranges. It's not the same thing.
Well, it's different networks. Yes, apples aren't the same as oranges. You get one view through CNN, you get a different view through Fox News. I think that's good in our marketplace of ideas is that we have media that offers diverse perspectives. And you want to talk about threats to our democracy? One of the threats, and that phrase is an interesting one, threats to our democracy. I think one of the biggest ones is the chilling effect on speech in our country more broadly, where if somebody says something that a broad segment of the population or certain people in the government disagree with, there's an increasing trend in our country to silence that. And the answer to bad speech and alleged misinformation is not less speech. It is more speech in the marketplace of ideas. That's actually what a free press really means.
All right, we're going to move on. But your answer was good, but it's not about what's actually happening. It's not relevant to what's happening. I think the answer to what happened at Fox News is to tell the truth. Media companies are tasked with telling the truth. That did not happen in this situation, and that's why we're asking these questions. But let's move on.
Let's talk more about a diverse exchange of ideas. That's what I'm in for. Thank you.
Glad you're here this morning. Your campaign slogan is a new American dream, and I was reading through your platform last night. I wonder what you would do specifically to actually bring us together, not just Republicans and Democrats. What does unity look like to you, Vivek, for rich and poor, for rural and urban, for Republicans and Democrats?
That is the right question to be asking. And I think the main divide in this country, and I say this to conservative audiences equally, is not between Republicans and Democrats. It is between those of us who are pro-American, embracing the ideals that set this country into motion, and I think an increasing strain in this country that is anti-American, that wishes to apologize for a nation founded on those ideals.
And this is what I say about you do not have to be colorless to uphold and hold colorless ideals. Terrorism, blood, and bodies. And anybody who is against that and do not back up 1776, you're anti.
But that's not a 50-50 split. I think most people are in the pro-American camp. And Poppy, I think one of the ways they would say we get to national unity, some people think, is by showing up in the middle and compromising. I respect that view, but I reject it.
You reject compromise?
I reject compromising on our principles. I think that the right way to get to national unity, and I mean this, to unite this country, is by embracing actually the radicalism of the American ideals themselves. We celebrate our diversity and differences. I'm glad we have 3 different shades of melanin on this set right now, 2 different genders. That's fine, but what I say is, so what? That diversity is meaningless unless there's something greater that binds us together, that unites us across that diversity. And I'm running for president to revive those ideals that bind us together across our diverse attributes.
I want to get into a few issues, one of them being China. Before I get to China...
3 different shades of melanin. Anyway, I'm going to leave it alone.
I just want to better understand something you said this week speaking before the audience at the NRA. Here's what you said, referring to back to 1865. Here it was.
I want you to raise your hand if you know when the first anti-gun laws were passed in this country. Raise your hand if you do. 1865. You want to know when it happened? We fought a civil war in this country to give black Americans the equal protection under the law that we failed to secure them in 1776. But then you want to know what happened? Southern states passed anti-gun laws that stopped black people from owning guns. The Democrat Party, then as in now, wanted to put them back in chains.
Then as in now, that's quite an accusation about the current Democratic Party.
Oh. It's the audacity. When people say we live rent-free in people's mind, and they are always placing Black people in the middle of something where we shouldn't be. I'm sure there may have been some Black people there, but overall the NRA is not concerned about Black people and gun rights, because they would have definitely stepped up for Philando Castile. They would definitely have stood up for the rights of the people who were marching with their guns with the Black skin on them. But they didn't. They don't care. But to use that, they are still using Black people and Black bodies for their agenda and for their enrichment.
Who and what were you referring to?
I was referring to Joe Biden and his expression of wanting to put them back in chains, dating back to Lyndon Johnson. I think Lyndon Johnson's so-called Great Society was one of the greatest misnomers in American political history, where even back then in the 1960s, 70% plus of Black kids were born into two-parent homes. Today, that number is less than 30% in the opposite direction. The very policies that we implemented in this country in the name of helping Black Americans have actually been disastrous for Black Americans and all Americans. And I think that that's something that we need to wake up to.
In 1865, you were talking about the Black codes, right?
That's right.
Passed, enacted to make it a crime for a Black person to carry a gun in the South. But you're equating that to the current president? You're referring to economic chains? What are you saying?
Well, I was referring to Joe Biden's, I think, ill-chosen expression to say they're the party that wants to put you back into chains. What I'm actually saying is that if you look at the policies of the modern Democratic Party.
About Democrats.
Absolutely. So what I'm saying is that actually it's policies like that of Lyndon Johnson and Joe Biden that are actually holding Black Americans back.
The war on poverty?
Yes, and in particular, his Great Society, where he actually created incentives in the family, where if you're a family, you could actually get more money by not having the father in the home.
And I ended up wanting to do a video specifically because of this, because I listened to this before, and for the life of me, it just shows me how a lie can quickly spread like wildfire, because the no man in the house rule had nothing to do with families. It had nothing to do with partners who were married. It had nothing to do with that. It was an expectation set that if a man was in the home with you, meaning he has access to your body and could possibly make more children, that this man be expected to take care of the children within the household. That no man in the house rule had absolutely nothing to do with Black people. It had to do with the nature of welfare benefits. That it was created from the beginning. When welfare benefits were first created, it was for women who were abandoned. So it was the abandoned women and abandoned children. And it started out for white women because they had no rights. Their husband could divorce them and move on with something else. And even if they held the majority of the money, they could have left them destitute. So, and that was the language used, the word destitute. So if they left them destitute, then the benefits, the beginning of these benefits were to feed women and children left destitute. So it wasn't like, oh, these Black people, we're going to get them, we're going to figure out a scheme to get the man out of the house. You can't get fed if, we're not going to give him any money on a job where he can take care of you, and we're not going to allow him in the home, and it's just going to destroy the family. There was no scheme and plan in a back room with the lights dim happening like that at all. So this is something that has been carried on, and now other people are starting to say this because it's been said so long in our community by the males in our community that other people are listening, and they're taking these sound bites and they're running with them, even though it's incorrect. And basically, it is racist. And I would have loved somebody to say this on CNN. That's incredibly racist to sit up here and say that Black people were affected because of the no man in the home rule when other people were getting welfare. So it's almost like the guy from TikTok who's basically saying all Black people were on welfare and are on welfare. They keep that trope going. But what he is saying is just so asinine. So it's good on him to know enough not to say anything about Fox News, because he is not going to be president of anything. There would be an ice cold glass of water in hell before he would win a presidency.
What you get, you get what you pay for. And I think it's been really bad for the Black community. I think it's really bad for all Americans.
What do you have anything on this before I move on to China?
I don't see what one has to do with the other, but go on. I took up a lot of time with Fox News.
Oh, it's fine. We have time.
I don't really see what one has to do with the other, especially consider and using the Civil War to talk about Black Americans. That war was not fought for Black people to have guns. That's not.
That war was fought for Black people to have freedoms in this country.
Yeah.
Actually, that's why the Civil War was fought.
Okay.
And the sad
that
part about
wasn't fought for Black people to have guns. I think
that war was not fought for Black people to have guns, and that war was not fought for us to have freedom. Nobody had a change of heart. Not the Republicans, not the Dixiecrats. None of them had this heart that swelled like the damn Grinch. And it swelled 10 times big, and we just shouldn't be doing this. Let's go ahead and just start this work. Come on now. Come on. How many times do we have to say that Lincoln did not want the South to secede? Or there would be no America as it is present. They had to do this Confederate, meaning together, to uphold this system and benefit.
Actually, you know, funny fact is Black people did not get to enjoy the other freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Still aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. And I think you're doing a disservice to our country by failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
When you are in black skin and you live in this country, then you can disagree with me.
And I'm going to play that back over because I completely agree with Don Lemon. It's very insulting to have someone who is colorless adjacent sitting up here telling you as a Black American what you have, who you are, talking about you have this privilege and you have equality and there's no racism and all of this BS, as if they live in this skin and know what it is. They are so quick to jump up on their hind legs and get up on a soapbox and tell Black people about our experiences. This is no different than the 1960s. This is no different going all the way back, where you have in black and white these people talking about, well, I feel like Black people, or Negroes, which they would say. This is the same thing in 2023.
Allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
Actually, that's why the Civil War was fought.
Okay.
And the sad
that
part about
wasn't fought for Black people to have guns. I think.
Actually, you know, funny fact is Black people did not get to enjoy the other freedoms until their Second Amendment rights were secured. And I think that that's one of the lessons that we learned.
Still aren't allowed to enjoy the freedoms.
I disagree with you on that, Don. I disagree with you. And I think you're doing a disservice to our country by failing to recognize the fact that we have equality before the law.
When you are in black skin and you live in this country, then you can disagree with me. But we're not. You mentioned in here that we have three different shades of melanin.
Don, I think we have to be able to talk about these issues in the open, regardless of the color of our skin. Black Americans today, to say that, compare that to 1865 and 1964,
I think for you to compare it to 1865 and 1964
is
actually, I think it's insulting to Black people. It's insulting to me as an African American. I don't want to sit here and argue with you because it's infuriating for you to put those things together. It's not right. Your telling of history is wrong. What
part of the history was wrong?
What part of the history was wrong? That the Civil War was fought. You're making people think that the Civil War was fought for Black people, only for Black people to get guns and for Black people to have.
The Civil War was fought for Black people in this country to get freedoms, a noble mission. And I think that even after we succeeded, we had to actually secure those freedoms.
To reduce it in a speech at the NRA to say you're making people think, or you're trying to say that Black people to get guns. That was the reason that you're there at the NRA. That was the reason for the Civil War.
It is a
that's
fact.
reductive.
It's not
and
reductive,
I think it's
Don.
insulting. There are a whole plethora of reasons that for the Civil War.
With due respect, I find your explanation reductive and actually insulting, including to black Americans, to say that black people today, compared to 1964, 1865, haven't made progress in part because of the freedoms we secured.
And this is kind of where the conversation I would have been done and over with it. But like I said, this is the whole interaction that actually got Don Lemon let go. He could have gave any type of speech he wanted to about Second Amendment rights. He takes black people and he talks about 1865 and the Civil War, and he tries to use that as just clout to sit up there and say, you know, the freedoms that black people, you know, should have got would include those Second Amendment rights, which is American. He thought he was doing something there, but that's actually disrespectful in the grand scheme of how we were dehumanized. And owning a gun is the least of it. And he thought he was being cute. And then when he's getting corrected and checked on it, he's still going to continue.
And the Second Amendment was
black
part
people,
of what secured
hang on,
that
please.
freedom.
I cannot keep a thought if you guys are talking to me in my ear. So hang on one second. So to say that black people, say what you said again.
Black people secured their freedoms after the Civil War. It is a historical fact, Don. Just study it. Only after their Second Amendment rights were secured.
They were not secured their freedoms after the Civil War. That is not, you are discounting Reconstruction. You're discounting a whole host of things that happened after the Civil War when it comes to African Americans, including the whole reason that the Civil Rights Movement happened is because black people did not secure their freedoms after the Civil War, and that things turned around. People tried to change the freedoms that were supposed to happen.
And you know how they got it?
War
They got their Second Amendment rights, and they actually got, the NRA played a big role in that. But today, Don, the
NRA did not play a big role in that.
Absolutely, they trained black Americans how to use firearms.
That's a lie. That's not. The NRA did not play a big role in that.
This is just historical fact. But
It's not historical fact.
The part that I
just
find,
because you say it's historical fact,
the part that I find insulting is when.
And I love that part right there where he said, it's not historical fact because you say so, because that is the sentiment across these types of people. They feel like I'm colorless and I say so card gets accepted everywhere. They think I am colorless adjacent and I said so card gets accepted everywhere. And everybody has this sentiment across the board that they can shit on and disrespect black people. Because you know good and dang on well he wouldn't do this to Jewish people. He would sit there and he would keep his mouth shut, and he would only color in the lines. He would never go venture off and be as disrespectful as he is to black people. With the same energy that he is giving Don Lemon in this interview, he would never say that about Jewish people because he knows what would happen to him. He would not twist and distort their historical events because he knows there are consequences to that. And this is the sentiment with all colorless and colorless adjacent people. They feel like that because they're colorless and they said so, that card is going to be accepted everywhere.
The part that I
Just
find,
because you say it's historical fact,
the part that I find insulting is when you say today black Americans don't have those rights after we have gone through civil rights revolution in this country.
You are sitting here telling an African American about the rights and what you find insulting about the way I live, the skin I live in every day.
Here's where you and I have a different point of view.
Black and white that black people don't have in this country, and that black people do have.
Well, here's where you and I have a different point of view. I think we should be able to express our views regardless of the color of our skin. We should have this debate
I'm not saying you
without me regarding you as a black man,
but
me regarding you as a fellow citizen.
That you're
That's
sitting
what I think
here,
we should see.
whatever ethnicity you are, explaining to me
whatever ethnicity
about
I'm,
what it's like to be black.
Whatever
in America.
ethnicity I am, I'll tell you what I am. I'm an Indian American. I'm proud of it. But I think we should have this debate. Black, white doesn't matter.
I think we should have this
on
debate.
The content of the
ideas. If you're going to do it, you should do it in an honest way and in a fair way. And what you're doing is not an honest and fair way. Okay? We appreciate you coming on.
With due respect, Don, I look forward to continuing that conversation.
We'll
Thank
continue
you.
the conversation.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, Papa.
We'll talk about China.
Yes, let's talk about China.
Next time you come back.
Oh, thank you. Much to say on declaring independence from China.
Don Lemon was better than me because, first of all, I'm not going to shake your hand. And after you are disrespecting Black people in our history and you are disrespecting a Black person to their face, no, I'm not going to have this decorum. You are supposed to sit here and let somebody talk ish in your face and be so disrespectful about your history, so disrespectful about what people, the horrifying things that people went through. He wouldn't have this level of disrespect talking about 9/11 either. And then expect somebody to shake your hand and be cordial and nice to you. I couldn't have done it. And me getting fired, I would have had a party and a parade walking out of CNN. He was giving pushback against the talking points of a supposed presidential candidate. This is what is supposed to happen. Like, what did CNN expect Don Lemon to kiss his ass when he's up here being disrespectful? And to me, this is not an L for Don Lemon. This happened because it was supposed to happen. And right now he is looking at a $50 million deal to host BET News, because it seems like BET wants to really get out there in the mainstream with the Foxes, with MSNBC and CNN. And right now, I wanted to show an article because I know why they actually did this. So basically, they had Don Lemon leave the prime time slot, and then he moved to mornings. And they tried to say that Don Lemon's show, Don Lemon Tonight, was failing in the 25 to 54 adult age demographic. Viewership was down 35% to 45% if you look at MSNBC 10 o'clock programming. You can see the numbers are horrid. Over 2 million for Fox News, 1.1 million plus for MSNBC, and half of MSNBC for CNN. So the age group is almost 300,000 for Fox, 119 for MSNBC, and 122 for CNN, which wouldn't have been that bad because you're actually over MSNBC. But since they let go Don Lemon, those numbers are going to get worse. Because to be honest, the only reason that I even looked at CNN for anything was because something came up about Don Lemon, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. Seeing these numbers, it tells the story. This is not Don Lemon's fault. This is something that corporations do across the board. They always try and look for somebody to blame, whether it is a corporate setting and they're trying to look for a specific person or a department to blame, or in this case, CNN is blaming Don Lemon for low ratings. So what we're going to look for is, now that Don Lemon is gone, we want to see a spike in ratings. If there is no spike in ratings, we know that it was an issue with CNN to begin with. Nobody is watching CNN. Nobody cares about CNN. They are not doing any groundbreaking information, interviews, or anything. Nobody brings CNN into any conversation about a special or anything, any reporting. Okay, Don Lemon was their last lifeline, and now they've let that go. It's bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. But we'll see where they go from here. And I doubt it's anywhere in the upper echelons of ratings. But I'll go ahead and leave it right here. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.